Fantasy football season is all about hope. Hope that your sleeper hits. Hope that breakout happens. Hope that this year your guy finally gets the opportunity. But here's the thing. NFL teams don't care about your fantasy team. In fact, pretty sure some of them actively hate us. Today we're talking about players whose fantasy value didn't just go down after the NFL draft, it got obliterated. Let's break down the carnage. Now let's start with the one that probably hurts me the most. That is Najee Harris. He signs with the Chargers and I'm like, yes, this is one of the best landing spots. They're going to run the rock. He's got a real shot to be the RB1. And then what do the Chargers do? Nothing crazy. They just go out and draft Omarion Hampton, the second best running back in the entire class, with their first round pick. Now, yes, Najee Harris will probably start the year as a lead back, but come on, Hampton is younger, he's more explosive, and he's just better. I think eventually we see Hampton take over this backfield. Not to mention, Najee Harris only on a one-year deal, so really, what commitment do the Chargers have to him? His value is on life support right now, and the countdown is on for how many valuable games Najee Harris has left. And if Najee's stock crashed, his former teammate Jaylen Warren's stock went down with the ship. This was supposed to be his moment in Pittsburgh, right? A lot of people thought Najee Harris is gone, and Warren truthers everywhere were ready to scream, RB1 season finally. But then the Steelers took Caleb Johnson in the third round, a big between the tackles guy who's basically Najee with more juice and fresher legs. So Warren, despite all the hype and hope going into 2025, probably just goes back to being the change of pace guy in Pittsburgh once again. Then there's Travis Etienne, aka the running back formerly known as a fantasy running back one. And let's be honest, the writing was already on the wall last year. He already was losing touches and snaps to Tank Bigsby. But then things really got spicy this offseason when new head coach Liam Cohen reportedly wanted to trade Etienne. Now that did not happen, but what they did do is went out and drafted Bashal Tutin early on day 3, a guy who's basically Etienne with more juice. Now Tutin's not built to carry the load between the tackles, but guess what? Apparently neither is Etienne. What Tutin can do is catch passes and break ankles, and he has more juice than Etienne has shown lately. There is a real shot Tutin ends up with the entire passing down role by midseason, and at that point, Etienne's value starts circling the drain. Etienne has gone from like a fantasy locked-in starter to maybe a guy who is third on the running back depth chart on his own team. Now let's talk about Tyrone Tracy, who had that sleeper heat for a few weeks last year. You know, the Giants' backfield was wide open, and Tracy looked like he might sneak into a real role, maybe even lead the committee going into 2025. But then the Giants went and drafted my boy Cam Skattebo. I'm calling him Cam Skattebo. I don't care. Skattebo is a better running back name. That's what I'm calling him. Anyways, that Tyrone Tracy dream died instantly. Skattebo does everything. He's built like a bowling ball, but he's got hands. He runs angry. He catches passes. And unlike Tracy, he doesn't fumble the ball like it's on fire. Tracy had real ball security issues last year, and now he's behind a dude who can do it all without coughing it up. So what's his role now? Probably just a third down or change of pace guy, the kind of player you start in fantasy only if your entire roster is decimated by injuries. Sorry, Tracy truthers, but it's Cam's backfield now. Then there's Jerome Ford, or I guess we can just call him now permanent RB2. We thought with Nick Chubb gone, maybe Ford would finally get his shot, but then the Browns used a second round pick on Quinshon Judkins, one of the best running backs in this class, a guy who is very similar to Nick Chubb as far as talent goes. But then they also use fourth round pick on Dylan Sampson, who I also like. So now you got to think Jerome Ford, nothing more than the third down, change of pace back, third on this depth chart. Really, the role for Jerome Ford is gone at this point. Ford is now back to being the sidekick here. Sure, he's going to get some touches, but what's really the upside? He's the fantasy football version of a placeholder text. He's just there. And sadly, let's pour one out for Jalen McMillan. After flashing late last season, there was real hope in Tampa Bay that maybe this guy would have a year 2 breakout, but the Bucs said, nah, we're good. They brought back Chris Godwin, and they spent a first rounder on everybody's wide receiver 2, Emeka Egbuka. So now you've got Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and probably a first round pick ahead of Jalen McMillan. He's officially on cleanup duty. I mean, best case scenario, what are we getting here? A couple deep shots, maybe a DFS dart throw in week 9. But that breakout season, yeah, doesn't look like it's happening in 2025. All right, let's talk about a player who had one of the most passionate underground fan bases out there. I'm talking about the Cokeheads. Yep, that's what you called yourselves. Jalen Coker truthers were riding for this man like he was the second coming of DeAndre Hopkins. And for a second, it looked like you might have been onto something. Carolina had no clear wide receiver 1. Bryce Young needed the go-to guy, and Coker was holding down that X-receiver role heading into year 2. But then Dave Canales said, no thanks, and the Panthers used a first-round pick on Tetiora McMillan, one of, if not the top X receiver prospects in this entire draft class, which is the exact role Coker was clinging to. Now he's stuck fighting with Xavier Leggett and Adam Thielen's retirement tour. I mean, you can still stash this guy in Dynasty, but that year 2 breakout that, the cokeheads thought were coming, sadly, probably not happening. Now, I got to admit, I really thought we were going to see something special out of Rome Odunze this year. New head coach and play caller Ben Johnson loves getting creative with those slot receivers, and there were real rumors that Odunze might move inside. But apparently Ben Johnson and the Bears had other plans, because first they took tight end Colston Loveland in the first round with their number 10 pick, and then in the second round they added Luther Burden, a slot receiver who has to be in the slot to be effective. So now Odunze back stuck on the outside again. With DJ Moore, Burden, a first-round tight end, Odunze just went from an absolute breakout wide receiver to a guy who now, once again, might be frustrating for fantasy. And while we're talking about Bears pass catchers, Cole Kmet, come on down. When a team uses the 10th overall pick on a tight end, that is not a subtle hint. That is a billboard that says, you're not really part of the future anymore. Colston Loveland is an athletic, fast, great route running tight end, and Ben Johnson already comparing this guy to Sam Laporta, saying you are going to be my Sam Laporta. Kmet still might be useful in real football, but for fantasy, he's now the tight end 2 on his own team, and that sneaky value I thought he had in 2025, yeah, no sneaky value here. And then there's Quentin Johnston. Oh boy, I mean, we should have seen this coming. The Chargers are doing everything they could to tell us they want a replacement at the X-wide receiver role. They brought back Mike Williams, but then to make matters worse, they drafted Trey Harris, one of the best X receivers in this class. So where does that leave Johnston? Not on my fantasy teams. This guy couldn't separate last year, and now there's a better wide receiver who can play in front of him. Not to mention competing with Ladd McConkey here. He's not just buried on the depth chart now. He's in a fantasy graveyard next to 2021 Kenny Golladay. And shout out to those of you who know who I'm talking about. Now, I love the Christian Kirk signing with the Houston Texans at first, and I felt like it was a very underrated signing. Obviously, Tank Dell maybe out for the entire season. Stephon Diggs gone. Wide open slot role in Houston. But then, of course, came the NFL draft. The Texans used day 2 picks on former Iowa teammates Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. Now, when they drafted Higgins, I thought it was fine. He's going to fill that Diggs role. But Noel, he's one of the best pure slot receivers in this entire class. Kirk might start hot, but by midseason, Noel's going to be cooking, and Kirk's going to be on the sideline. Back to running back, and Ramondre Stevenson was a trendy late-round pick that I even kind of liked here. Thought maybe he could bounce back this year. Maybe the Pats wouldn't draft a running back till very late, and then boom. Nope, they go out and get Travion Henderson, one of the best running backs in this class. He's the most explosive running back in this class, one of the best pass catchers, and he's by far the best pass protector in this class. So at a minimum, Ramondre's pass catching role is gone. Not only that, though, I think his carries might also be in danger. If he continues to struggle or continues to struggle with fumbles, Travion Henderson could certainly start to take over and eat into his carries. Oh, and if you somehow still believed in Antonio Gibson, I don't know what to tell you. This guy is Mr. Irrelevant now. Next up is Chuba Hubbard, who was a certified league winner in 2025. Dude was racking up points and carrying squads into the fantasy playoffs, but now he's stuck in the fantasy version of rush hour traffic. First, Carolina signs Rico Dowdle. Now, Rico Dowdle is not an elite running back, but he's shown that he is more than good enough to be an NFL running back. But then they go and double down by drafting one of my favorite running back sleepers, Trevor Etienne, a dynamic pass-catching back out of Georgia. Now, I don't think Etienne is coming in and taking over the whole backfield, but this has the ugly running back by committee energy written all over it. Chuba might still be good for fantasy, but the days of him saving your season, they are over. Then I save maybe the best for last, and this is the biggest faller of the entire draft. It has to be, of course, Shedeur Sanders. I mean, a lot of people had this guy mocked in the first round. Second round at worst. He was supposed to be like, the next big quarterback prospect behind Cam Ward. But then he just kept falling and falling and falling. Dillon Gabriel, yes, Dillon Gabriel of Oregon, who most people barely had inside their top 10 quarterback prospects, got drafted ahead of him. The league clearly sees something they don't like. There's just no way this guy's going to have any redraft value, and even his dynasty value is nothing more than a stash and hope type of player. Shedeur Sanders, easily the biggest faller in the 2025 draft. So those players just saw their values go up in smoke, but if you want to see some players that just saw their values go way up for the better, or even how I'm ranking these rookies, or many more videos that can help you this offseason, you got to check out our 2025 offseason playlist right here.